Welcome back to Sprague Homestead on another Mailbag Monday. So the first question that I got, that I get quite regularly actually, is how do we dispatch rabbits? So we use a cervical dislocation method, which is basically putting the rabbit's head in a bracket, pulling and dislocating the neck and breaking the neck. We use a product called Rabbit Ringer. There's another one called Hopper Popper. And then there's a whole bunch of different brands out there. A girlfriend of mine just bought a Hopper Popper. But like I said, we have the Ringer. You can look. You can also do what's called a Broomstick Method, which accomplishes the same thing, where you put the animal's head on the ground, put a broomstick over the neck, hold the broomstick down with your feet, and pull up on the rabbit with their feet. I don't like it that way. For one, if you're going to do very many, I think it would be really hard on the back, and it would kind of depend on the size of the rabbit, too. For a full-size rabbit, for women, that might be a good method, because you can pull up and use a lot of body weight on it, but we, like I said, prefer the brackets on the Ringer, and it's quick, easy, and done. So this question, I think, is kind of an oddball for this time of year, but I'm seeing it in a lot of my groups. So I don't know if it's people getting ready to plan for the next year or what, but that is, what is a good brand of incubator and what do I recommend that people start out with? So when I started out just hatching chickens and then worked my way up into turkeys, we always used a still air foam Incubator, and then we had the turner in it, because I find that's kind of the tedious part, is getting in there and making sure that the thing turned. But that was when we were in Mississippi, and it was far easier to keep the humidity up. Now what I use is I use a Brinsea. I have the full-size cabinet incubator, I want to say it's an Ova Easy 190, and it's got 3 racks in there plus a hatching area, and I can do a lot of chickens and turkeys and ducks, and I'm getting ready to order my quail rails for next year to hatch some quail. But I personally would really recommend the Brinsea. The Incubator is a good way to start. It's fairly inexpensive. But the Brinsea models, and they have a ton. They've got stuff that will do like 7 eggs on up to a 390, which is, see, mine's rated, I think, for 144 eggs, and then theirs has 2 more racks, so it's got to be pushing like 190, 200, somewhere in there. They have a whole bunch of different models. The thing I like about them, for us, they're very low power draw. For the size incubator that I have, the next really good model is a GQF Sportsman, I want to say it is, and they draw twice as much power. So for us, it's a power issue in part. But the other thing is, the Brinseas are, I don't want to say idiot-proof, but they're super automated. So you can go in there and select your temperature. You can select how often to turn them. I have the humidity pump that goes with mine, so literally, as long as I keep my reservoir full, I tell it what humidity level to put it at, and it will automate all of that for me. So for me, being a busy homesteader, that is by far the best way to go. And the humidity pumps are available on several different models. I don't think all of them, so I think the smaller ones that you get, you do have to do some manual stuff. But the other thing is, for here, we're so dry that it would be like a full-time job to try and keep a styrofoam incubator at the right humidity level. Like I said, Mississippi was easy because the humidity was already so high, but here it's so dry that I think it would be a little bit too much work. My girlfriend in town that does uses a Incubator says that she has to check hers 4 and 5 times a day for humidity because we're just so dry. So if you're in more of a deserty type environment, you probably want to avoid the foam incubators or find some kind of way to keep the humidity high. But for my money, and they are more expensive, I would recommend the Brinsea. Alright, so we've got an LGD question, which is always fun. This person was asking specifically, and I've gotten this a few times over the years, and I think we've talked about it in other videos, is they were interested in getting a pup that was a Pyrenees crossed with a Border Collie. So basically an LGD crossed with a herding dog. And they were asking, was this like the ultimate farm dog, right? It should do everything. And unfortunately, no, it doesn't seem to work that way. Both breeds tend to be pretty loyal. If you can get, you know, a really good animal, it might be a good family pet. But unfortunately, for some reason, when you cross the two groups, what you get is conflicting instinct. So they don't herd, they don't really guard, and you've got a dog that's high energy and ultra stubborn, and they tend to bark a lot and dig and run and do all these things. It's almost like they embody every bad trait of the two breeds. And I know people have had them and some people love them, but by and large, it seems to absolutely blow up in people's faces. There was a breeder not too far from us that was doing this very same thing. They were crossing some kind of pure cross with, I want to say it was a border collie or an Aussie or a mix. And every single one of those pups over the span of 2 years, I saw cycle out through either being rehomed on Craigslist. Some of them ended up in the pound. So it's not a good idea, and I don't recommend it. I think if I were offered one, I would probably not walk away. I would probably run. All right, so we've also mentioned that it is goat season, right? And bucks are in the rut. So I got a message from a really nice new homesteader that had recently rescued a goat, I guess, out of a bad situation. And she wanted to know what to do because he just stunk. She said it's horrible. He's just stinky and gross and kind of crusty. So in getting more information, it turns out he's an intact buck. And unfortunately, that stink is the rut. So when I mentioned to her that, yeah, they're pretty gross and they pee on themselves, she said, oh my God, is this why he's peeing in his own mouth? She had assumed, and I don't know the whole situation of where they came from, but she had assumed that he did it because he must not have had access to water. And so no, that is how they marinate themselves in their bucky musk. So yeah, unfortunately, no, there is not really anything you can do to combat that other than wait it out. Usually by March, April, the boys are coming out of the rut. They'll stink a little bit yet. Usually by midsummer, ours are doing all right. And then by August, September, here it comes again. So if you're going to raise a buck, just be used to it. It's kind of an annual thing. If you cannot live with it, and what I told her is, if you cannot live with it, since you only have a doe or two, you might want to just go ahead and get him weathered, and he'll quit doing the rut thing, and eventually he'll be pleasant to deal with. But if you want to actually keep him intact, it's just part of what you're going to have to deal with. All right, so naturally we're in fall, and somebody was asking me about tomatoes. So apparently where they are at, they are getting ready for their first big frost of the year. Lucky devils, we've already been freezing, but they have a bunch of tomato plants that kind of got a late start, and they're full of green fruits, but they don't have a good way to cover them. I guess there's too many plants, or the temperature is going to be really low. So they were asking, what do I do about this? And my advice was, pick them and pick them all. If you don't think you can save the plants, it's better to pick them all. We had to do that a couple years ago where it was going to get into like the low 20s, and it did. So Kane and I spent 3 hours outside one night picking every tomato on the farm, and I think we had about 20 plants that year, and just putting them in boxes. We kind of did them by color, so if they were showing, if they were yellow, they went in this box. If they were really pale, starting to turn orangey, they went in another box. If they were green, they went into another box. So we did a bunch of different stuff with them. We did some green tomato salsa verde. There's a great recipe for it. I think in the bulk canning book is where I got mine. A friend sent me a green tomato chutney recipe, which is really awesome. There's a bunch of different stuff you can do with them. We made fried green tomatoes and that kind of stuff. But the other thing is we just kept a close eye on them, and as soon as we could get enough to do a batch of anything, we would take them out, sauce them, whatever we were going to do. It's a long process. You got to really stay on it. You don't want your boxes too deep. just because the weight of them will start to crush each other and you'll get mold, and once you get mold, it's over. But we had a whole bunch of boxes, and we didn't go anything more than, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches deep. And just keep a close eye on them. And by close, I mean, I was in there about every 3 or 4 days going through them, making sure, and pulling and moving stuff around to make sure that we weren't getting anything bad. But yeah, that's my advice when they're green tomatoes. You know, if you cannot cover them to a degree that they're going to make it, you might as well pick them all. It's better to get something than nothing. So the next question I got was probably one of the most interesting questions I've had in a while. And that is somebody that was getting ready to start their homestead. And they said, quite honestly, they hate chickens. It's a childhood thing. What is better to have? I mean, was chickens absolutely necessary for eggs? Or could they go the route of ducks? Now, we don't get a lot of questions about ducks. We do have ducks, and we've raised ducks for quite a few years. We're actually getting rid of ours. We were supposed to last year, and I got sentimental. But this year, we are going to be down to like a quad, and that's going to be the end of our ducks. We're kind of letting them live their days out. So if you really can't stand chickens, and I kind of get it. I'm not a big chicken fan, believe it or not. I raise chickens and have about 300 on the farm at any given time throughout the year. But I really don't like them. Ducks, however, are funny. You never have to chase them up a tree. If they get out, they don't run that fast. So they're a little bit easier to catch. If you're looking for egg production, one, make sure that you try duck eggs, because they are a whole different flavor. So you got to make sure that you actually like them first. I don't personally like the flavor of duck eggs, but I love to bake with them. So that said, if you like the flavor of duck eggs, there are some really good breeds out there that lay really good eggs. There's a hybrid 300 or Gold Star hybrid. Different hatcheries call them different stuff, but there's a couple different hybrid ducks that specifically are bred to be egg layers. They tend to be smaller ducks. Your Indian runners apparently are really good egg layers too. And they have like 0 meat value because they just look like penguins. But they're really comical. They'd be something really fun. The only other thing I will tell you about having ducks is, one, they usually won't coop at night. And two, the water requirements are really, really high. So go into it being realistic. Do you have what it takes to keep them in water? They need to be able to submerge their head to keep their eyes and nose holes clean. And that is actually the reason we're getting rid of ours, or cutting way back, is it's just a full-time deal here in the summer because our water evaporates off so quick. So it kind of becomes a thing where to run 3 pens of ducks and a thing of geese becomes a really, really big job. They foul their water really quick, and you've really got to keep water fresh to keep them healthy. So between chickens and ducks, if you like the taste, I'd go with the ducks. At least they're fun to watch. But there again, just make sure you've got the water requirements met. Okay, so I had 2 other questions that I'm actually not going to answer in this video, but I am going to tell you that I'm making videos on both. One of them was somebody who wrote in and said, I am buried under zucchini. What do I do? And I think that's something that plagues all of us that raise zucchini at one point or another. So I'm going to do a whole video about recipes and things that we like to do with zucchini. So that's going to be a different video. The other thing was somebody had asked me, what are my favorite homestead books? I think most of you have figured out right now I don't watch a lot of YouTube. But they were asking about my favorite homestead books, websites, that kind of stuff. And I have a pretty extensive homestead library, but there are some that really stand out that I think are awesome, awesome books for newbies. And I'm just going to do a whole separate video on it. That way I don't take 10 minutes to talk about books. So, because, you know, it's going to be several different categories. I've got animal books and vegetable books and that kind of stuff. So that is it for your Mailbag Monday. I know we missed last week, so this one had a few extra questions. But if you have questions, feel free to email them, Instagram, hit me up on Facebook, or just post them down in the comments. And I will do my best to answer them and possibly put them in a video coming up. So that is it for today. We will see you next time. Happy homesteading.